Hey, it's Conor Cunneen, Irishman Speaks here again, providing you with some simple tips, tricks, and techniques about adding humor to your presentation, adding relevant humor to your presentation to reinforce your message. I recently had a good chat with Mike Markovitz from the Luber College of Business at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where I introduced one of my core tools or concepts to help you to add that relevant humor to your presentation. And the concept is based around, believe it or not, the word laugh. Yeah, can you believe it? The word laugh, L-A-U-G-H. Here, having introduced the word laugh and the first element, which is listen, we now take the next two elements of the laugh acronym, A and U, to help you add humor to your presentation in a relevant way that will reinforce your message.
So that's the first element of the LAUGH acronym, listen. If we go through the next two, I'll take the next two together, A and U, okay? As I indicated there, Mike, earlier, we'd probably laugh more heartily at a joke, a well-crafted joke. But you only hear a well-crafted joke once every week or 2 weeks, apart from going to a comedy shop or something like that. But in general, though, what we laugh most at are anecdotes that people tell us or that we tell people. And the anecdotes that make people laugh are not the stories or the instances where everything was perfect. The anecdotes that we laugh at are instances where people were uncomfortable. That's the U in the laugh acronym. So listen for an uncomfortable anecdote, an anecdote that is uncomfortable, and pay attention to that. They're the funny little ones. I'll give you a quick little example on this one. Let's assume I'm speaking to you or your audience as you're in the manufacturing community and you need to come into work with 10 fingers and toes and leave with 10 fingers and toes. Safety is important. For you, as a safety audience, you need to be aware of your surroundings. And if you're not aware of your surroundings, you're going to land in trouble. I'll give you an example. A couple of days ago, I was collecting my darling granddaughter, Maggie, from soccer practice. My wife and I went over to collect Maggie. We were taking her overnight. We popped Maggie into the backseat of the car, 6 years of age, and my wife sat in beside Maggie. My daughter went off, said goodbye to us. Then I sit into the backseat of the car as well. And after a couple of seconds, Maggie looks over and she goes, "Grampy, you should be driving the car." And I kind of said, "Oh, Maggie, come on, let me sit here." She, "Grampy," as only a 6-year-old gorgeous grandkid could do. I drive the car. So I said, "Okay, I'll drive the car." I get to go out of the car. We got a problem. We're on child lock, which means we're on Grampy lock as well. Okay. So what I've got to do is I've got to phone my daughter to come back into the parking lot. I realized I had a nice little humorous anecdote when Amy, my daughter, is walking over to us and she's breaking her sides laughing at it. But the point for you as a safety audience is that what happened there was I wasn't aware of my surroundings as much as I should have been. I wasn't paying attention to what was happening. If you don't pay attention to what is happening, you in the manufacturing community can end up in trouble. If you're not aware of what your colleagues are doing, they can end up in trouble as well. And just as a reinforcement for this, as you as a manufacturing community, what I would say is that I'll ask the question: how many of you have kids who are strapped into the backseat of the car regularly? I might get 10-15% of the audience raising their hand. I say, next time you're strapping your kid in, remember the child lock example. What are the equivalent child locks in our industry that if we don't pay attention to, you end up in trouble? And for those of you who don't have kids, you'll probably come to a traffic light tomorrow. Maybe the Honda Odyssey next door has got a kid strapped into the back seat of it. You see that and you say, right, I got to remember what the roadblocks are or what the instances are that can cause me to not pay attention or lose attention, or if I don't pay attention to them, we're going to end up in trouble. So that's a little example of something. There's a specific example there, Michael, an anecdote, which did happen, marginally uncomfortable there. That was all really marginally uncomfortable, but they're the ones that make people laugh. And if you go back over the last week or two, or as the next week when you're telling a story and you're getting people laughing, I say to yourself, all right, is there something in this story that I can use? Is there a moral to that story? And if you can find a moral into it, just pop it into your system, record it, and sometime somewhere you will be able to use it. Okay?
Okay, yeah, I really like the memorable nature of it, you know, tying it to something that we can all call back to very easily.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. One of the ones, Mike, that I regularly do with my audiences is I'll ask them to take out their iPhone and or Android and just Google for funny newspaper headlines. Funny newspaper headlines. It is a gold mine of information. And as they're there on their iPhone looking at the funny newspaper headlines, the room was starting to laugh. I say, all right, what did you see there? They'll show some comment from the newspaper that they're laughing at. Someone will, as you say, oh, I've got that one as well. And then someone else will make some other comment, that kind of thing. So I say, all right, then, scroll through any of these here now. In your environment, is there any of these that you might be able to use in your presentation? And I mentioned the safety audience there a couple of minutes ago. If you Google this, Mike, will basically come up with the same answers whether we Google in Wisconsin, in Chicago, or down in New Orleans, all right? But one of the ones that regularly pops up is a headline, safety meeting ends in accident. Okay? What I could do there is that if I made a presentation on safety, I told the story about the child lock, etc., and you got to pay attention to your detail. And gang, no matter what kind of environment you're in, problems do occur. I might just pop up that slide. Now, I rarely use slides in my keynotes, but when I'm teaching this, obviously I would use slides then. So that's a fantastic area for people to look at. Other areas that people could look at that would reinforce the message. And we're talking about reinforcing now. It's a reinforcement mechanism. So you could maybe Google for things like, what did Mark Twain say about teamwork, about politicians, about leaders, etc.? What did Groucho Marx say about managers? What did Will Rogers say? So we'll listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, G is for Google on the Bing, and the final one is H, Mike, and H is for he, to hope.